does not feel like the types of players the White Sox are going to use to fill out the rest of the roster are going to be very appealing.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm Todd Welter. Welcome to Locked On White Sox, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm a lifelong Sox fan and been podcasting here for over a year and a half and covering the team well before then. And also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Beefloaf of FromThe108.com joins me today. We will get to why making small moves can actually be a good thing after we tackle some interesting trades the White Sox could pursue and see if there are any updates to the team's core. But first, let's discuss Beef's suggestions of the types of players the White Sox could acquire to fill out the rest of the roster. And again, joining me, he is the man, the myth, the legend, and now he's unmuted, Beefloaf. And Beef, I first want to dive into the general concept of how, because you got a great blog up right now on FromThe108.com, a good piece about how you approached examining the White Sox 40-man roster as you tackled it from very interesting angles of like using the Pacific Rim, cutting the fat, even though nobody would think the proverbial fat would be on a White Sox roster, and then, certain types of players.
Thanks, Todd. I appreciate that. So, I wanted to write a blog about the addition of Anthony Kay, but I wanted to do something different because a lot of people had already covered, he had gone to Japan. He changed his pitch mix. Now he's throwing 6 pitches. Now he has a 2-seamer, and he's throwing cutters. And I wanted to get away from all that. It had already been covered. And I really wanted to dive in on something I've been eyeballing ever since the offseason started, and that's the White Sox 40-man roster. And we've gone through iterations here. We went through the White Sox protecting some players from the Rule 5 draft, adding them to the 40-man roster. That's Tanner McDougal and Duncan Davitt. We've gone through minor additions, trades there when they traded for Everson Pereira and Tanner Murray, and they had another small trade for pitcher. But I wanted to kind of look at it from the standpoint of White Sox fans say all the time to me, they're like, Beef, man, we got so much fat on the 40-man to cut. And I wanted to look at it and say, do we really? Because I think our 40-man is less fatty than you think. It's a bad team's 40-man, but it doesn't have all the stuff that like a Rick Hahn 40-man would have, where it'd be like 3 guys that are an A-ball that you have zero chance of using in any way, shape, or form this season. Like, we don't have a lot of that type of stuff going on. So I started taking a look. Like, when you look at the projected 26-man roster, there's very few. Like, you might want different players in those spots, but the spots are kind of adequately covered. I mean, this was the crux of the article too, is like, yes, you might want player B instead of player A, but the character of the type of the player that the White Sox have laying around there is what you want to have. Like, they have a second center fielder on the 26-man roster in Derek Hill, right? They have some guys with some position flexibility in some of these spots. Like, Vargas can play both of the corners, and Curtis Meade can play both of the corners. And right now, probably the only goofy thing you have on the 26-man is a third catcher, which you'll have to resolve before you finish spring training, where you have Kyle Teel and Edgar Quero pretty much entrenched as the top 2 catchers, top 4 prospects, had nice years last year. There's a lot of trade buzz around those gentlemen, but you also have Korey Lee hanging around. Korey Lee is out of options. He's going to have to either be traded or kept on the roster, or you can try to pass him through waivers. That'll never happen. Someone will claim him. Like, he's not bad enough to be pushed through waivers. And then when you start looking past the 26-man, the White Sox don't have sort of a ton of extra pieces laying around that you're like, oh, well, that should just be thrown away. They have Ben Cowles, who they picked up from the Cubs, who might be total garbage, but every team has a 6th infielder type guy who could cover shortstop. So you get rid of him. That's the Vinny Capra and Braden Shoemake and my guy Jacob Amaya's spot right there. Every team has that. You start looking around at some of the corner position players. They've got Tanner Murray, they traded for. They have Brian Ramos hanging around, who maybe he is part of the fat. Todd could be, because he's also out of options. You got some starting pitchers laying around here. Some of them are injured, some of them are not. You really only ostensibly have one bullpen arm. If anything, the 40-man needs a little filling in, but it doesn't seem to have as much fat as it would seem. Bad players, potentially, yes, but not fatty from the standpoint of it's not putting out the parts that you kind of can use or plan to use in the near future.
All right. I like how you had player 36, because there's still 4, there's still a couple more roster spots to fill. I like player 36 because obviously we're recording this ahead of time, but tomorrow, it'll be Wednesday. That'll be the Rule 5 draft, which was monumental for the White Sox last year. Doesn't normally happen, but I like how player 36, Rule 5 draft pick that will be a pitcher and will not be nearly as good as Shane Smith. Is it fine, though, if that pitcher is like Mike Vassell or even just a decent wrong reliever? Because I think they found the secret sauce to, if you're picking it that high at the top of the Rule 5 draft, you should take a guy because it's $100,000. Take a guy. And
take anyone, yes.
Yeah,
Agreed.
and you should take a pitcher because you can at least get some positional versatility, because if he can throw strikes, he might actually be able to contribute.
Oh, agreed. 100%. This pick will be great if they got a league average reliever for 60 innings in 2026, Todd. I'm not besmirching the player that's going to be picked here. What I'm trying to do is set expectations. We got a once-in-a-generation Rule 5 pick with Shane Smith. They don't go to the All-Star game. Rule 5 picks don't go to the All-Star game. We all know that. But the Milwaukee Brewers, for lack of a better term, they screwed up. And they left a guy out there they shouldn't have left out there. And we got him. And he became an All-Star. And he's very good. Like Shane Smith's a guy to build around. He's a guy who's going to be on the roster. But usually these picks, they get shuffled back to the team. In a lot of instances, they get returned before spring training's even over. So I agree 100% with you. If they got Mike Vassell, even Mike Vassell light out of this pick, it would be an enormous score, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get on that, is because I think some people are going to be like, oh, the Rule 5. It's like, it's a good place to find a good pick. I would actually, though, I will say this, I would be fuming if they did take a hitter, just because the chances of a hitter actually doing anything in the rule, out of the Rule 5 is really hard, because again, you're usually probably taking a guy at AA, and that's a really big leap to have to be the entire year. I remember when Enrique Cruz, my first year working at the Brewers, was their Rule 5 pick. He was the designated opening, the first pitch catcher, and I think he ran the bases a little bit. I like how you have left-handed, number 37, left-handed hitting outfielder that can also cover first base. That probably should have just been Mike Tauchman. Truthfully, still could be Mike Tauchman, but could it be Ryan O'Hearn?
It could be Ryan O'Hearn. Yeah. I don't know if the White Sox are going to make that kind of investment in a hitter. I think it would be wise for them to do so, because I actually just had a BZ on from Sox on Tap, and I was talking about the fact that I understand the idea of getting rid of Mike Tauchman because of the age, because the body was starting to break down. He wasn't as much of a defender or runner anymore. But Todd, he had a 356 on base percentage last year and 383 plate appearances. And let me tell you something. I looked up and down this 40-man. I don't see anyone who's going to be replacing that there. So unless they go outside and do grab a substantial bat, that is going to be a hole in an up-and-coming offense. And we watched them in July and August hit the crap out of the ball, perform very highly. But when you saw them start to get a few injuries amongst the veterans, guys get nicked up, that offense took a nosedive. And so every bat that's not in there kind of is like a domino effect to the rest of the offense. And so maybe it's Ryan O'Hearn. I would like it if they did invest in a veteran bat. I have no problem with Ryan O'Hearn. I have no problem with a lot of the mid-market options that are out there. I'm just not sure that they're going to actually end up pulling the trigger on it.
Or it could be Adolis Garcia. I think that's another one that's been, kind of like just absolutely logical with his ties to Will Venable, but maybe he wants to go to a contender. The other one that I kind of want to go over, I like this. Number 39, premature DFA from a contender of a player that hits too good to not be on these White Sox. That actually sounds like, even though he wasn't DFA'd, he was non-tendered. That sounds like Adolis Garcia, like a guy that should just not be actually still on the White Sox. And also, does this speak to how this this franchise just is trying to revive careers, but just seems incapable of it?
I don't know if that's specifically, although they do have a long history of that, Todd. We've watched a lot of guys who have over the hill come back over here and do that. The reason I'm looking at it this way is because this, as much as we enjoyed the second half of the 2025 White Sox, and they got a lot of momentum going or whatever, I think there's a little too much excitement from the standpoint of it's not fully baked yet, and they still should be searching for random parts that, especially guys that have years of control that have kind of been let loose because the team just can't hold them or they're out of options or whatever. And you can see that on the White Sox 40-man, the entire bench worth of players, the Curtis Mead class of players, the Everson Pereiras of the world. None of these guys have options because the White Sox realize, look, they're forced off of other rosters. Either we got them in trade or whatever, and we should give them a shot. We should give it a try, because if we hit any of these guys, you've got 5-6 years of control here. And so my thought here was like, some team is going to come upon that situation at some point in spring training, and the White Sox will pounce and maybe the person will wash out in a week or two. But those are the types of gambles I see the White Sox needing to take at this point.
Yeah, I'd actually like to see them get like their Brent Rooker instead of their Nick Maton. Well,
there you go.
Well, GM Chris Getz keeps talking about the young core getting better for things to get actually better. So let's see if there are any updates to the core that Beef keeps track of, and also maybe some bold trades that could be made to add pieces. And let's discuss that next. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. And I recommend playing the same game parlays or the player props. It gives you the chance at a bigger payout. For example, think Chicago can win the next 4 games and finish with over 12 wins? Well, the Monsters of the Midway, finishing with 12-plus victories, is at plus 200 the last time I checked. So there's a chance to double your money there if it does happen. Think Chicago can still win the NFC North? Well, that's at plus 270 the last time I checked, so a chance to almost triple your cash. And if you really want to dream big and think Chicago can get to the Super Bowl, they're at plus 1,400 to win the NFC Championship game. You could throw $10 on that, and if it does happen, you could potentially pocket $140. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, so can you. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On White Sox with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to LockedOnWhiteSox.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. Here with Beefloaf of From the 108. And Beef, again, where can we find all your great content?
You go to fromthe108.com, and you can find basically everything there. Blog, merch store, all of that. You can also find us YouTube at From the 108, obviously on X at From the 108, Blue Sky, all the normal places. Instagram, too. We've been trying to do some Instagram-only content, Todd. Me and the boys have gotten excited about trying to learn Instagram a little better, try to build up our following there. So we've been doing our top 8s of various things there. And it has nothing to do with the White Sox, just random stuff. Like I did my top 8 scams that the Sopranos family ran in the show. Like we're doing weird, fun stuff like that. MSS did his top 8 Smashing Pumpkins songs. So just different stuff to have some fun on Instagram that's strictly for Instagram. So trying to curtail content to the various sites.
Yeah, I've been using TikTok a little bit more than Instagram, at least when it comes to the content like White Sox stuff or not, because Instagram I've kind of thought of like that's probably like stuff for still like my family to see and that type of thing. So that's the way I look at it. Yeah, that's the way I look at Instagram. It's like, I think my like friends from back in high school, if they want to catch up on that. Before we get into the core, I actually want to go back to one more thing that you had when you were talking about rounding out the 40-man roster. Sure. And that's number 38. Another starting pitcher that we'll probably lose faith in by mid-March. Does this feel like the White Sox are probably going to add a swing pitcher like Bryce Wilson? I kind of, when I read that, I'm like, oh no, we're going to end up with another Bryce Wilson.
Exactly, Todd. I was thinking that's exactly what I was thinking of, because like they they need more depth. Like it's pretty obvious you're a little thin on the starting pitchers, even the guys on the roster or the guys with options or whatever. You have enough right now to get to the first day of the season, but you don't really have enough. You're feeling like a little naked there, and you got Mason Adams coming back, and you got Kai Bush, and you got Drew Thorpe, but all these guys had Tommy John. So I don't know if they're coming back in May or July or August. So they're going to need to solidify a little more. But I think they took their big shot. Anthony Kay, I think, is their shot when they're talking about buying a real starting pitcher. So it's going to be one of these guys that they feel comfortable, exactly like you mentioned, like a swingman, a guy who can start some games. And then if Noah Schultz or Hagen Smith gets on a roll and needs to get promoted right away, that person can slide into the back and throw multi-innings. The White Sox seem to have been trying to accumulate a lot of these guys who can throw multi-innings. Mike Vassell was the most successful one, but I think they realize the lack of depth and the lack of front-end starters that can throw a lot of innings, and realize that they're going to have to pile up guys who could throw 70, 80, 100 innings out of the bullpen, and that's kind of what they did last year, and I see them doing it again this year. All
right, so Beef, my core players is broken into short-term and long-term, and I'm going to show the lineup for those watching on YouTube. If it'll come up. There we go. All right. So basically, I also have it broken down on guys underlined. That would be like short-term core or still has to earn long-term, like, or they're Andrew Benintendi. You're just stuck with a contract. They are there. And then the ones that are underlined in italics, they are definitely long-term. So I got Colson Montgomery, Chase Mydroth as long-term. I've got Shane Smith, Sean Burke, although Sean Burke, I don't know if it's going to be a starter just because, if he can't get the command, he was getting his fastball up to 99 towards the end of the season. So that's definitely
that was nice.
Yeah, that's bullpen value there at least. And then I got Vassell, Leisure, and Grant Taylor. And then you could see Sosa, Miguel Vargas, just because, he's got to hit a little bit more, I think, for long term. Brooks Baldwin, just because they are obsessed with him being the next Ben Zobrist. And then Luis Robert Jr. at least for next season. That's my core. And then Quero and Teel, obviously. That's my core. How do you differ from what I got? Or do you agree? Or, because I know you have your spreadsheet and that type of stuff.
Well, yeah, I like the way you, if you don't mind putting the graphic back up, Todd, I like the way you set this up because you kind of have it in various tiers. Like, yeah, these guys are here right now. They're kind of a part of it or whatever. And I like the differentiation here. You have Miguel Vargas and Brooks Baldwin kind of in to me, they're in that gray area right now. Like you have them placed with the guys that are probably going to be discarded, right? The Andrew Benintendis and Luis Robert Jr.'s. But I think they're closer to italicized as like probably part of a longer term plan here than they would be closer to those guys. But it's tough because even though I liked the output of Miguel Vargas last year, I agree with you. In order to be a first baseman, he's got to hit more. In order to be a third baseman, he's got to field more. He's kind of a tweener right now. You're not throwing him away on a 100-loss team. But on a team that's a 500 team, I don't know. Is he a bench player? Is he like your number 7 hitter? I mean, kind of what is he there? Brooks Baldwin seems to have a high-level utility, and he showed in the second half. His WRC plus, I think, was a 121 against right-handed pitching. So he had a really nice second half. Now, I don't know if that keeps up. That could just be one of those flashes. We've seen Brent Lillibridge have a good half season. I mean, the guys have good half seasons. It happens in the utility role. But I'm curious to see how 2026 rolls out if Brooks Baldwin is given a couple months to be the strong side of the platoon in right field to see what that looks like if they concentrate the plate appearances on him and if we continue to see kind of the level of protection we've seen, I think he's going to stick even if he's not a guy who plays every day. And with Vargas, I mean, Sean Anderson said it like 20 times. He needs to put on more weight and get even more power. And I agree with that. I think for him, it's just the power. He needs to go from a 19, 20 home run guy to 25, 26 home run guy. And then I think he's a little more comfortably on the roster. But I love the way you had that set up. I don't have hardly any disagreements there. I think Chase Mydroth might not be a starter at some point. I think Grant Taylor's long-term a bullpen guy. I don't see him sneaking back in the starting rotation like some people do. I agree with you on Sean Burke has the raw parts. So just put him on there and who knows what his role ends up being. Like there's stuff here. I'm not ready to say they're a contender, but there's some stuff here.
Yeah, and also Lenine. So Chase Mydroth, I put him in long term again too for the the utility potential. Like I think he's going to be on this roster in 2029. Is he the starter or is it Sam Antonacci? Because I think this is a huge season. I think for Chase Mydroth, he's got to hit 280 or 290 because he's got the on base percentage, but he's not going to slug. So he's got to be more bat to ball to match than what his high on base percentage should be. If not, Sam Antonacci, at least in the minor leagues, has shown he can do that and still get on base. That's why on that, but at least Chase Mydroth, he still gives you versatility. And then the one guy before we get to the trades, and we might have to push that to the next segment, the Lenine Sosa. He is also because, gosh, I mean, it's so. I mean, he went from being the Godfather 3 player to I think he's earned the right to be back next season. But again, he's another guy like how you guys had like Hulk up. Like he's got to either put on weight.
Get bigger. Try to hit 30 home runs, Lenine. Don't worry about defense. You stink at it. Don't worry about base running. You stink at it. You have that baseball IQ of a potato. Just hit 30 home runs for me. Just smash the ball. That's all I need out of a Lenine Sosa. And when I saw the interview with Derek Shulman did with Chuck, he seemed to embrace the idea that, Lenine has this great hit tool and he's got power. And maybe we can get something out of this. And so I've just been saying, turn into Nelson Cruz. I know that's a ridiculous thing to say, but just become the DH. Just become the guy who hits the crap out of the ball. And Todd, you mentioned the trades. It was segue a little bit here. One thing that Treasy and I learned in the trades, when we tried to trade Lenine Sosa like 3 or 4 times, and what we learned is what you get back is not as fun as Lenine Sosa. So maybe Lenine Sosa's highest and best value is 35th in shields, smashing home runs. I don't know.
All right, we're actually going to talk about some of these trades that Chirizi and Beefloaf proposed on From the 108 because I'm fascinated by them. And we're going to get to them next. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. And I've used Game Time for things like getting 10 tickets to a Milwaukee NBA game. I got great seats. My entire party was able to sit together with a great view of the game. Pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. Prices include fees up front, which I love. No last-second surprises at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, you can get the audio version of the show on places such as Apple or Spotify. So make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me and maybe some hope. Also, make sure to check out my written content at SouthsideSox.com and on TapSportsNet.com. Here with Beefloaf of From the 108. And make sure to check out his written content at FromThe108.com. And I liked how you and Chirizi put together trade packages for every team possible. Now, I don't want to get into every single one because we'd be here for hours. And
Chirizi and I did 2 full hours not doing all of them. And we did chunks of them. But yes,
yeah.
We can go. You go a long time on those things.
Yeah. Sure. So the one that I want to ask is which one do you think is the most realistic chance of happening?
You know, that's a good question. It's tough to say realistic. I would say something like, and it wouldn't be the exact trade, but we did a trade with the Minnesota Twins where we flipped Korey Lee for Eduardo. I'm forgetting the guy's name right now. Give me 1 second here to pull this up. But another guy who was in a similar situation where out of options, a position that they can't really use. There's a lot of redundancy in there. Eduardo Julian. I'm sorry. Korey Lee for Eduardo Julian, something like that. Because inevitably, Korey Lee is a guy who is going to need to get traded off this roster unless there's an injury or something else freak happens. I don't see the White Sox carrying 3 catchers for an entire season, and Korey Lee's out of options, but he's not the caliber of player you should just let out on and release. Like, because someone will pick him up. He's of value to somebody. He's catcher number 2 on lots of rosters, and so he has some value, and he's young, athletic, got some pop. So I could see the White Sox making a trade like that. With the Twins, something like that is probably most realistic from my standpoint. The White Sox don't have a lot to trade from, Todd. When we were working through these deals, and Chirizi and I have done this for 6 years now. We will take, after the World Series, basically, we start digging in on every team, and helps us learn the team's farm systems, that what the teams need across MLB. It's just sort of a litmus test for us, and then also helps us learn, like with the White Sox, okay, where's the flexibility here? Where do we think there could be a good deal available there? And so, yeah, this was probably the toughest year because of the position the White Sox are in. There's not a lot to deal as far as like veterans off the roster. And then the younger players, it's like you can make trades for them, but it's tough. A lot of teams don't want to do those types of trades.
Yeah, and I mean, let's see. You got Luis Robert Jr. at $5 million more, at $20 million. And you got a GM valuing them still like it's 2023. And then you've got these wild rumors now out there, and you have a good blog too on From the 108 talking about this. Kyle Teel and Edgar Quero rumors. Now, I was flabbergasted that Boston was like, no, I want takebacks. I want to be like, no takebacks, Boston. You cannot have them back. But Edgar Quero as well. Like, it seems like the White Sox are Courtney Finicum of Just Baseball is reporting that they are actively shopping him. Can you elaborate then on the idea of anchoring? Because that was kind of the interesting take that you had on those. Yeah. And also then, what is your kind of stance on, should they possibly entertain trading Teel or Quero?
Well, okay, so yeah, the crux of the article when these and the rumors came out a couple weeks ago, and yeah, they've heated up only more with the winter meetings. A lot of the White Sox fumes that have been coming out have been people asking about the catchers, and it makes sense, right? You have a redundancy, a quality redundancy. That's where people are going to start asking because it's most likely you might trade from there. But the concept of anchoring is basically like showing someone the most expensive doll on the showroom, and then when you realize they don't really want to afford that, you might get a little higher price for doll number 2 that's not quite as good, not quite as shiny as doll number 1. And so anchoring is the price of doll number 1, which is the more expensive one. You're anchoring doll number 2 closer to it. And so it's a concept kind of used in sales. It's a concept used in numbers. If we asked you to pick a random number, but we threw a number out there and we said between these two numbers, you're going to go closer to the number we threw out there. It's just your brain naturally kind of does that. And so I put out the concept that the White Sox would be smart to listen on Teel and Quero because they know inevitably they've got to trade Korey Lee. And so they should get a little bumped up price on Korey Lee should they, before they end up having to deal him, if they're engaging in talks with the other catchers. Teams need a catcher, and okay, you end up settling on the Korey Lee. And yeah, Korey Lee's not going to fetch you anything close to what Teel or Quero. They're not in the same ballpark, but you're going to get a little more on the thought of concept of anchoring.
Yeah, you're going to get a Matt Thaiss return possibly, but hey, I mean, organizational depth. Although I want to go back to the lineup really quick because I have on my my bench Tanner Murray, Derek Hill, Everson Pereira, and Curtis Mead, just because I think especially Pereira and Mead meet the runway criteria of guys that are formerly high regarded. Although I do want to give Kyle Teel a nickname, and that's Blanky, because I mean not Kyle Teel, Korey Lee. That's Blanky because he all of a sudden became this security blanket to Will Venable. To have Teel and Quero in at DH or catcher, because they both have to be in the lineup, I think, to really make the offense work at least 5 days a week. So I could see there is a scenario where Korey Lee actually does take away maybe a spot from if Curtis Mead doesn't hit. Maybe they are just like, you know what, we're going to move on because of the fact that maybe they do want to carry 3 catchers because it's the only way they're going to get Will Venable DH, at the same time. And also, maybe they do take a look at, and I think they should start doing this. It's driving me nuts that they're not, because winning and losing still doesn't matter. Give Korey Lee an outfield glove. He can run. See if he can go play left field.
That's funny. They put him in left field, Todd. I think it was the final game of the season at home.
We were there.
Put him in left field. Yeah, you were there. And he runs down the line. He makes a nice sliding catch down the line. We're like, man, look at that, Korey Lee. And then the next thing you know, balls are bouncing off him in left field like he's never seen a fly ball before in his entire life. So to me, I'm not sold on the fact that they will carry a third catcher. The other issue here is, though, when you think about it, like, it's hard to burn that spot when they're already talking about, Chris Getz is already talking about getting Andrew Benintendi off his feet and making him DH more often. We all know Lenyn Sosa's natural position is DH, right? And then the other catcher inevitably should be DHing. Like, I don't really love the idea of trying to get, I don't care how athletic Kyle Teel is. I don't like the idea of trying to give him a glove in the outfield or trying to give him or Quero a glove at first base. I'm not really a big fan of that. I think their highest and best use is as catchers. And the fact that you have 2 of them of quality, you can keep the other one fresh. You're not going to run one guy into the goddamn ground during the year. They have some interplay with Quero being such a good right-handed hitter and obviously Teel being a good left-handed hitter. So you can kind of play off of that. You can move Teel out of the lineup in favorable situations with lefty. And so I don't mind that approach. It'll be interesting to see. If they carry 3 catchers, happy to eat crow, but I don't think they will. I think that Korey Lee has to end up somewhere else, or they figure something out.
Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. I'll be back tomorrow to tackle who the White Sox took in the Rule 5 draft and why you should not expect that player to be like Shane Smith. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. If you can't catch the show on YouTube, make sure to follow or subscribe it wherever you get your audio podcast so you get all the latest episodes. We're on platforms such as Apple or Spotify. You can follow the show on X, formerly Twitter, at Locked On Sox, or at Todd J. Dub. Also, follow the show on TikTok at Locked On Sox. You can also email me, lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Beef, again, where can we find all the good stuff that you produce?
Todd, you can find everything at FromThe108.com. We actually have a special live stream Thursday night. It's our annual Festivus show. We're starting at 7 o'clock. We're going to have some names from the local media, including the closer of the Festivus show is going to be Mark Silverman, Sylvie, from Waddle and Sylvie. But a bunch of different people that Sox Twitter will know out there. Airing of grievances, it's going to be a 4-hour show. We also have a live show January 31st. That's a Saturday night. Doors at 7:30. show at 9:30 at Reggie's Rock Club, 2105 South State Street. That is the Saturday, the second night of Sox Fest Live. So you finish up at Sox Fest Live, you come over and check us out. 108.ing/party. You can buy those tickets. 108.ing/party. Thanks for having me on, Todd. It's been a great conversation.
Hey, no problem. Have a great day. Talk to you tomorrow. And did Locked On White Sox make your Spotify Wrapped? Prove it on social media to secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club. Just tag our National Locked On Podcast Network account on any social platform, and we'll drop you a code. Be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club to get your favorite show ad-free and exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen Locked On MLB.